It begins in the marble halls of the central bank, far removed from the bustling streets of the everyday economy. Faced with a looming crisis or a stagnant market, the decision is made to inject life into the system. With a few keystrokes, billions, sometimes trillions of currency units are conjured into existence. This is not money born from labor, production, or savings. It is fiat in its purest form, money created by decree. The narrative sold to the public is one of rescue and stability, a rising tide meant to lift all boats. However, the crucial detail often omitted is that this tide does not rise everywhere at once. It has a specific entry point, and that entry point dictates the winners and the losers of the economic game.
The new money does not appear in the pockets of the teacher, the welder, or the retiree. It flows first to the Cantillon insiders, the large commercial banks, sovereign governments, and massive financial institutions. These entities receive this liquidity at near zero interest rates. Because the money has just been created, the general price level in the economy hasn't adjusted yet. These early receivers possess a superpower, distinct purchasing power before inflation hits. They do not use this cash to buy bread or milk. They use it to acquire scarce assets. They buy stocks, bonds, and real estate, bidding up prices and generating massive paper wealth before the rest of the world even knows the money supply has increased.
Richard Cantillon, the 18th century economist who identified this phenomenon, compared money to honey. When you pour honey, it doesn't spread out flat instantly, it clumps in the middle first. As the insiders bid up asset prices, the stock market rallies and real estate values soar, creating a wealth effect for the asset-owning class. The rich, who own the majority of these assets, see their net worth explode upward. Meanwhile, the money begins to slowly ooze outward from the financial sector into the broader economy. It passes from the banks to corporate accounts, then to luxury service providers, and eventually, slowly, down the supply chain. But as the honey spreads, it leaves a sticky trail of rising costs in its wake.
By the time the new money reaches the last receivers, the wage earners and those on fixed incomes, the game has changed. The money is now diluted. The teacher and the welder might eventually see a small wage increase, but they find that the cost of living has risen faster. The housing market is now out of reach because the insiders bought up the inventory. Food and fuel prices have ticked up because the increased money supply has bid up commodities. For the working class, this isn't a stimulus. It is a theft of purchasing power. They are receiving money that is worth less than it was when it was first printed in Act 1. They are paying the price for the prosperity enjoyed by the first receivers. The cycle concludes with a permanent shift in the social fabric. The transfer of wealth is complete. The rich have stayed rich and gotten richer, not necessarily because they worked harder or innovated more during this period, but because they stood closest to the spigot of new money. They held assets that inflated, shielding them from the devaluation of the currency. The poor and the middle class, who hold cash or rely on sticky wages, are left holding a bag of inflation. The Cantillon Effect reveals that inflation is not a natural disaster, but a mechanism of redistribution, silently siphoning value from the late receivers to the early receivers, cementing the divide between the haves and the have-nots.